Tonight, a flight bound for the U.S. diverted to Canada, the direct result of an American travel ban tied to Ebola.
Suddenly, all the flight attendants had face masks on, and they won't give you a reason.
An exploding case count abroad drives fear and policy changes, but are border restrictions necessary? A new review by the government that could curb the right to strike.
They've basically opened up the entire Canada Labour Code.
Unions shun the notion while others say it's just good business. And he defended the U.S. Capitol. His question now, why?
What did we do it for? What was that sacrifice for?
New backlash to a fund that could compensate January 6th rioters.
From CBC News, this is The National with Chief Correspondent Adrienne Arsenault.
Thanks for joining us. Tensions are rising, as are the number of suspected deaths from the Ebola outbreak centered in Congo. The U.S. is restricting some travel from the region, and that forced one flight heading south of this border to land in Canada instead. Montreal's airport suddenly caught up in it all when U.S. authorities barred a passenger on board that plane from entering. The unfolding crisis also sparking new clashes in Congo between local customs and the race to stop the virus. One treatment center was burned by loved ones upset they could not retrieve a body. There is a global scramble now to contain the spread of the virus. She and Desjardins with what we know happened to the passenger forced to disembark in Canada.
An international flight bound for Detroit diverted to Montreal, to one of Canada's busiest airports, on board a citizen of Congo, where a deadly Ebola outbreak is worsening rapidly.
Suddenly, all the flight attendants had face masks on. So that was also very concerning when, they suddenly tell us that we are being diverted and they won't give you a reason.
New U.S. rules bar entry to non-U.S. passport holders who have been to Congo, Uganda, or South Sudan in the past 21 days. The U.S. Secretary of State defending that decision.
Our number one priority will always be making sure it doesn't come to the United States. That's our number one obligation.
Health officials say the passenger was assessed, found to be asymptomatic, and flew back to Paris. An Ontario resident, however, is being tested after traveling to East Africa.
What we know is that border closures don't really work.
Canada has not introduced travel restrictions, but this outbreak comes at the start of a busy travel season. Still, experts stress the risk of Ebola transmission here is low.
It's not 0%. The longer this goes on for and the larger the outbreak gets, then the higher the probability is that someone's going to travel with this infection.
But if that happens...
Is there going to be like a widespread outbreak of this in Canada? No, of course not. No, we're not going to have that.
This doctor, who worked with Ebola patients in 2014, says there are protocols countries can put in place.
I think Canada should screen people who are arriving from affected regions to see if they have symptoms, to see if they were exposed in any way.
The World Health Organization is still calling this a public health emergency of international concern. Canada's list of travel advisories is changing as the outbreak develops. Chien Deschardins, CBC News, Toronto.
In communities right at the heart of this devastating crisis, intense grief is mixing with frustration as the desire of some to bury those they've lost collides with rules meant to prevent more death. Lauren Pelly shows us what it looks like when that boils over.
Charred tents are all that's left of this Ebola treatment center in the Democratic Republic of Congo, the result of a clash between authorities trying to stamp out the outbreak and the loved ones of someone who died, who wanted to take the body home for a funeral. Police say a young local didn't grasp the reality of this disease, while authorities were clear all bodies must be cremated to prevent more transmission. Suspected deaths have now hit more than 160, with the vast majority in Congo and at least one in nearby Uganda. Possible cases have soared to at least 600. Officials warn the real numbers could be far higher, and it could be months before there's a usable vaccine for the outbreak's relatively rare strain. Africa's climate poses another roadblock.
Maybe in hot and humid environment, you're able to stay and care for patients for half hour, 45 minutes at a time before you get too hot, dehydrated yourself, and people will have to leave.
This Toronto physician worked in West Africa during a massive Ebola outbreak in 2014. He says getting healthcare teams better protective equipment with built-in fans could help them reach more patients, but
it's really a race against time.
This Winnipeg microbiologist fears containing this outbreak won't be easy. After his own experience tackling Ebola in Liberia, he warns getting workers and supplies into remote areas can require days-long journeys.
The unfortunate reality is that we're not looking at a few weeks of this. I think it's certainly going to get a stretch out for longer than that period.
Officials in neighboring Uganda are now clamping down on travel. The country is suspending flights and ferries to Congo and tightening border controls. But it's not yet clear if these efforts will help slow the spread of this devastating outbreak. Lauren Pelly, CBC News, Toronto.
Alberta Premier Danielle Smith announced her government is adding a question to a referendum scheduled for October about separating from Canada. But as Julia Wong explains, the wording isn't quite what some separatist Albertans hoped for or others feared.
Tonight I wish to speak with you about the debate we are having in this province on the future of Alberta and Canada.
After months of speculation, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith outlining Thursday the path forward for the province.
I will be requesting our government add an additional question to the October 19th referendum vote announced previously.
That question: should Alberta remain a province of Canada, or should the government of Alberta hold a binding provincial referendum on whether or not Alberta should separate from Canada?
This question will also ensure the 700,000 signatories to both the Forever Canada petition and the Stay Free Alberta petition are respected, and the will of Albertans is heard.
But ultimately, it's a referendum on whether to hold a referendum. Some sort of separation question had been widely expected, after an Alberta justice quashed a pro-separatism petition and clashes at a legislative committee meeting.
We have a government that is absolutely hell-bent on having a referendum, on driving this through.
Those fighting for separatism are not happy. A lawyer for Stay Free Alberta posted on social media, the Premier deals a referendum from the bottom of the deck. To hell with the more than 300,000 Albertans who were promised a vote on their question. This former Deputy Premier behind the Forever Canada petition to keep Alberta in the country is frustrated with Smith.
And this is not an issue for the Premier or anybody to play with. And now we will have a 6-month campaign that will be very divisive, very aggravating, to have another referendum.
She's painted herself into a corner.
This expert says Smith has few options politically. While the vast majority of Albertans want to stay in Canada, the majority of UCP voters would vote to separate, and separatism supporters make up a considerable portion of the party's base.
And they're holding her feet to the fire, and so she has to somehow walk this line between getting enough for Alberta in terms of enhanced sovereignty to keep the separatists off her back. And I think this referendum is part of that strategy.
In her speech, Smith said that she supports Alberta remaining in Canada and says that's how she would vote in a provincial referendum.
And Julia, at least some Alberta separatists don't seem happy with this. What is their next move?
Yeah, that's right. You know, based on reaction that we're seeing on social media, some are already calling for Smith to be removed. You know, I spoke with one political science expert who says that separatism supporters, well, they could force a leadership review, and they say there's no guarantee Smith would win it.
All right, thank you. That is Julia Wong in Edmonton. Now, later in the hour, Rosie and the Ad Issue team will be here to dig into Danielle Smith's message tonight and what it could mean for Alberta's place within Canada. Well, the Carney government is weighing changes to labor law, including who can strike and when. Marina von Stackelberg now with what's on the table, how the Liberals are justifying their review and why unions are already fighting back.
As Canada embarks on massive plans to expand rail, ports, and international exports, unions worry the federal government is trying to fundamentally alter labor rights in this country. Ottawa is consulting on changes to the law that protects more than 1 million Canadian workers.
They've basically opened up the entire Canada Labour Code, and when you look at the consultation documents, there are a lot of things there that have been on corporate Canada's wish list, including new limits on the right to strike.
Some of the possible changes could see Ottawa enforce earlier starts to bargaining and longer strike notices. It could affect who is allowed to go on strike by changing what is considered an essential service, and could look at how to use Section 107 of the Labour Code differently. The federal Liberals have increasingly used it to single-handedly force striking workers back on the job.
It's no secret that the country is under immense stress.
Jobs Minister Patty Hajdu says there's an economic urgency to modernize the Labour Code, so Canada's workers and employers can reach agreements without Ottawa getting involved.
So the survey really is asking about how we could support collective agreement negotiations earlier, what kinds of tools are working, whether or not there are better approaches.
Businesses say part of Canada's strategy to rapidly expand its economy is about being reliable, especially after recent major labor disputes shut down ports and rail.
And if other countries don't believe that Canada can reliably deliver the goods because we have consistent labor disruptions, that's going to be a significant problem for the economy.
But the opposition says the government isn't making changes in good faith.
The concerning thing is we've seen the most labor disruptions in 30 years under this government because they've so poorly managed labor relations in this country.
Canada's collective bargaining regime has been in place for decades and decades and decades. You can't make changes within a month.
Unions say most collective agreements, more than 95%, are reached without any labor action. But they say if they don't have the right to strike in those rare cases, they completely lose their power at the bargaining table.
Marina, can you talk us through some of the measures Ottawa's looking at?
Yeah, so Ottawa is also looking at improvements to workplace health and safety, especially in high-risk jobs, speeding up grievances and training workers whose jobs might be impacted by artificial intelligence. Unions say they're all for that, but they believe the government is already planning to draft new legislation. And based on the short 38-day timeline of these consultations, they worry its mind is already made up.
All right, thank you. That is Marina von Stackelberg in Ottawa. In Washington, there's growing outrage on both sides of the aisle over a $1.8 billion fund that could be used to support the people behind the January 6th riot. Katie Simpson spoke with one of the officers who defended the Capitol about why his rage now extends beyond the Trump administration.
January 6th rioters may soon qualify for compensation from the U.S. government over unfair treatment. A proposal that is adding a new layer of insult to injury.
Push it back!
For those who defended the Capitol that day.
I was outraged. I was angry.
Former Washington, D.C. police officer Michael Fanone was severely beaten in the attack.
Mike, stay in there, buddy.
He is adamantly opposed to what Donald Trump calls an Anti-Weaponization Fund.
As if it wasn't enough that he went and pardoned those individuals, he's now going to use American taxpayer dollars to pay them.
Any American who feels the Department of Justice has been weaponized against them could apply for compensation. A 5-person board shaped by Trump's DOJ would adjudicate cases and grant payments from a nearly $2 billion fund.
Thank you very much.
Trump has long accused the previous administration of targeting him and his supporters, including January 6th rioters.
So many lives destroyed, so many livelihoods ruined, and this settlement is just a small measure of the justice that they are owed.
Just to be clear, people that hurt police get money all the time, okay?
On the slush fund.
On Capitol Hill, the backlash has been swift.
It's the most blatant act of corruption in American history.
Democrats and even some Republicans are speaking out.
But this is, this is just stupid on stilts.
Anyone in America who's shocked or surprised by this hasn't been paying attention.
Fanone says he fears this fund will inspire more political violence. And in this moment, he appears distraught at just how normalized it all seems to be.
This is what Trump supporters voted for. And so, my anger has since turned, like I said, to the American people for betraying me and betraying my colleagues who fought to defend democracy. Because what did we do it for?
2 U.S. Capitol Police officers are suing the Trump administration to try to block the fund. And lawmakers postponed a vote, an attempt at exerting leverage until they get more answers. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
Still in Washington, there's new clarity tonight on the U.S.'s reasoning for abruptly pausing participation in a defense board with Canada that dates back to the Second World War. So let's go right to Aaron Collins in D.C. Aaron, can you take us through the key points laid out by the Trump administration?
Yeah, so Adrian, on Monday, the U.S. Department of Defense simply said Canada failed to make credible progress on its defense commitment. So today we have some specifics, right? And the gist is that the Pentagon doesn't think Canada has a real plan to meet its new NATO commitment to spend 3.5% of GDP on defense by 2035. And Canada did recently reach an earlier commitment to get military spending to 2%. And in a statement today, Canada's Defense Department kind of pushed back on that idea, writing that increases in defense spending had already strengthened Canada's warfighting capabilities. But that's not good enough for the Americans, and some Canadian military experts say the Pentagon may have a point.
I do think that the U.S. official has a point that we haven't actually come forward with detail around the path to 3.5% being spent on of GDP being spent on national defense. Given our track record of it taking 12 years to hit a 10-year target in the past, I think there is a degree to which the skepticism is warranted.
Another irritant for the U.S. Defense Department, the review by Canada of its purchase of American F-35 fighters. The Pentagon says that review lacks transparency, and they suggested it's an example of the prioritization of politics over our shared responsibility for North America's defense.
Aaron, to what degree does it matter that the U.S. is pausing its involvement in this board?
Yeah, it's a good question. It depends a bit on who you ask. So the Pentagon described it today as the premier defense policy talks that happened between the U.S. and Canada. So that sounds significant. Some important things have come out of these talks since they began in 1940. NORAD's a good example. Construction of the Alaska Highway happened out of these talks. But on Tuesday, after this news first broke, the Prime Minister had a different take. Mark Carney kind of played it down, saying the last time this board met was the end of 2024, and that pausing it was more of a signal than a huge deal.
All right, that is Aaron Collins in Washington tonight. Israel has begun deporting the more than 400 activists, including 12 Canadians, it intercepted at sea as they were heading to Gaza, several of them alleging abuse while in detention.
We've been beaten, tortured.
They treated them like we are under the animal.
Me personally, I was kept in cuffs where I can't feel my hands anymore. I was kicked in the ribs multiple times.
Free, free Palestine!
This comes after Israel's Minister of National Security posted a video of himself taunting the bound and kneeling detainees. Israel's Prime Minister said the conduct was, quote, not in line with Israel's values. And the country's prison service said the detainees were held with full regard for their basic rights. Canada's broadcast regulator is looking to make major streaming service providers pay a steeper price to operate in this country, in part to better support the creation of Canadian content. Ashley Burke now on the plan and why some worry this could further fuel trade tensions with the U.S.
American streaming giants like Netflix, Disney, and Amazon Prime now being ordered to spend more money in Canada, whether they want to or not.
No one ever likes being regulated. No one ever likes particularly being asked that they should pay more into a system. Clearly, streamers would have preferred not to have base contributions, much less the requirements today.
The CRTC says to ease the burden on Canadian broadcasters, it's demanding big streaming platforms contribute 15% of their annual Canadian revenue to support Canadian content.
Most of the rest of the European Union are in the single digits when it comes to these kinds of requirements. And so Canada, with this decision, becomes really one of the most expensive jurisdictions for streamers to operate in.
The big American streaming platforms are already in federal court challenging the 5% levy the CRTC imposed in 2024.
The escalation from 5% to 15% is seen as an additional trade escalation.
Industry watchers in the U.S. call the Canadian measures discriminatory and say consumers will ultimately pay the price.
Basically would result in higher subscription costs being paid by the consumer.
There could also be a political cost. Republican Congressman Lloyd Smucker introduced legislation in March. It calls for an investigation into what he describes as Canada's unfair policies. It's another potential irritant for U.S. President Donald Trump. His team has been pressing Canada to make concessions as CUSMA comes up for review in July. The group representing all the major American streamers released a statement condemning the CRTC decision, saying it violates the free trade deal and urging Canada to reconsider. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
SpaceX is going public on the stock market in what could be a record-breaking debut.
It is absolutely a historic valuation, and probably won't see something like this for quite some time.
With investors rushing into AI and space tech, is this the move that makes Elon Musk a trillionaire? And a renewed tribute to Amelia Earhart in Harbour Grace, Newfoundland.
It was somewhat of a mystery what had happened to the statue.
We'll show you the town's efforts to fix a broken statue honoring the aviation legend. We're back in 2. As it should be, a hero's welcome for the Montreal Victoire, returning home just hours after winning the Professional Women's Hockey League Championship. This marks the first time in the league's 3-year history that the coveted Walter Cup has been won by a Canadian team.
Yeah, we need to take time to enjoy that. It's pretty amazing. We won that as a team, a special team here. So I think we're going to get some few days, few weeks to have some fun.
Hope so. Victoire players posed for photos, signed autographs for the diehard fans who gathered to celebrate the newly crowned champions. Well, tonight, SpaceX postponed its highly anticipated test launch of a new rocket, but its bid to launch as a publicly traded company, well, that's a go. The move could make Elon Musk the world's first trillionaire. But as Lane Harrison explains, for investors, it's also a trip into the unknown.
Usually, it's rockets, but SpaceX is preparing for another type of launch. Elon Musk's company is planning an initial public offering, or IPO, a step toward trading on the NASDAQ stock exchange that could be worth more than $1 trillion.
It's a historic IPO. It is going to have volatility to the likes that we probably have never seen before.
After growing through Starlink internet satellites and reusable rockets, SpaceX could instantly become one of the most valuable publicly traded companies on Earth.
They want to raise a boatload of money. They want to continue to innovate. They're talking about raising $75 billion. You just don't do that by going passing around the hat.
Musk has long been known for his ambition to bring humans to Mars, but most of SpaceX's revenue has come from its Starlink satellite internet division.
So Starlink internet is what's being used to pay for humanity getting to Mars.
And according to the IPO filing document, most of SpaceX's spending is on its least profitable division, xAI. The plan to attract investors includes building AI data centers not just on Earth, but in orbit by 2028.
SpaceX is less a space company and more of an AI data company at this point.
Not everyone is convinced orbital data centers will work.
The promise is that you get sort of free energy from the sun, but then you have to worry about how do you actually cool all of these things up in space, which is an unsolved problem. If something goes wrong, if a GPU goes down, it's up in space, far more difficult to be fixing these sorts of things.
If the IPO this summer is successful, Musk could become the world's first trillionaire. There are also reports that AI giants Anthropic and OpenAI are both eyeing their own public offerings. Lane Harrison, CBC News, Toronto.
Disney is facing a class action lawsuit over its use of facial recognition at Disneyland entrances. So it began using the technology back in April, saying it was to ease re-entry and help prevent fraud. The lawsuit alleges Disney doesn't adequately disclose that it is collecting biometric information, including of children, and is violating privacy rights and consumer protection laws.
Even though we're expecting a below average season in the Atlantic,
It's very important to understand that it only takes one.
This year's Atlantic hurricane season is expected to be quieter than usual. The U.S. National Weather Service is predicting between 8 and 14 named storms, with 3 to 6 becoming hurricanes. Canada is slated to release its outlook next week. And after the break, Rosie's here with that issue. Hey, Rosie.
Hey, Adrienne, tonight we're obviously going to talk about how Danielle Smith is choosing to deal with the issue of Alberta separatism. What could all of this mean for Alberta's place within Canada? Chantal, Althea, and Andrew join me to talk about that and a whole lot more. At issue tonight, Alberta separatism. The Alberta Premier puts another option on the table for a vote.
Muzzling the voices of hundreds of thousands of Albertans wanting to be heard is unjustifiable in a free and democratic society. It's time to have a vote, understand the will of Albertans on this subject, and move on.
So what will this new question mean for Alberta's future in Canada, and what's been made of how Danielle Smith is dealing with all of this? I'm Rosemary Barton, here to break it all down tonight. Chantal Hébert, Andrew Coyne, and Althea Raj. Good to see everyone. So this is now sort of a third option, I guess is the way to describe it, that Danielle Smith has put on the table. Chantal, what do you make of this as a political move tonight?
Okay, so I think that Danielle Smith totally believed until last week that she would be asking the question from the referendum, from the petition on separation that was thrown out by a court. So the fallback position is a question that basically is the status quo, or it's a choice question. It's not a yes or no question. Right. Those who are used to referendums, forget that. The answer is not going to be yes, it wins, no wins. It's a choice. A bit more like Brexit, remain or leave. First question, status quo, improved, the Premier is promising, or giving the government a mandate to set in motion the process for a referendum on separation, which basically means that regardless of the outcome, there will not be a mandate to separate from Alberta when that question is posed and answered, which also means that the federal government does not need to dig out the Clarity Act to see if the question is clear, because suppose people say, no, we don't want to remain in Canada as it is. We want to give you a mandate to set this in motion.
Right.
Well, then this gets set in motion and everything else happens. But that vote in October, presumably, is not a make or break vote about whether Alberta wants to separate. Is basically the end result.
So while your explanation was very good, this is what then? Buying some time, Andrew? Is that the best way to say it, or trying to find a way out of this? How do you interpret that?
Yeah, well, she's dug herself into a ditch and she's trying to get herself out of it, but only getting part way out. Look, this isn't about remain or stay. It's not even about the mandate to negotiate that René Lévesque sought. This is about a referendum on whether to hold a referendum. So la farce continue. This is in the grand tradition of convoluted referendum questions, but this maybe takes the cake. The danger, of course, is that some people may vote on this saying, look, even if I vote for the referendum option, doesn't necessarily mean we'll even have a referendum, because maybe we'll lose. But we might get close enough to scare the rest of Canada into making concessions. So you've got the potential for strategic voting squared here, even before you ever get to a referendum. So there was no necessity to any of this. There's no binding requirement, which he refers to commence the legal process under the Canadian Constitution to hold a binding referendum on whether to separate. There's no constitutional process for a referendum or for separation at all. The Constitution doesn't mention either of those.
No.
There are things about what you can't do. You can't violate people's treaty rights, for example. But this is all basically made up hokum to get her out of a problem that she got herself in with, because half of her party, if not more, are separatists. She's been riding that tiger, and oftentimes, as it said, people who try to ride on tigers end up inside them. And so she's trying to avoid that fate by basically putting the province through this ridiculous ordeal, and the country as well.
So, but is it a smart way to get out of having to have a referendum about separation, or is it none of those things, Althea?
I guess it depends whose perspective you take. If you're Danielle Smith, this is a good way to get out of a jam in the sense that if she didn't put a referendum question to Albertans in the fall, there is a huge chunk of her caucus, as Andrew mentioned, not her caucus, her party, pardon me, that was actually threatening to have a non-confidence vote in a special meeting later this summer. So you can see that she's in a bind and she's trying to find a way out, but it's incredibly messy. I mean, the most honest thing would have been, frankly, to call an election over like having a mandate from the public to have a question like that put to the electorate. Instead, she comes out with a strong defense of Alberta's place in Canada, but also a very different view of the province's place vis-a-vis the federal government in our constitution, a very, I would say, revisionist version of the Federation. And when you couple that with the other questions that are going to be placed to voters in Alberta in October, a lot of constitutional questions, you know, working with the other provinces to abolish the Senate, working with the other provinces to make sure that you could say no to healthcare funding, for example, but still get cash from Ottawa. She wants constitutional reform at the same time as she's saying that that's not really, you know, she's not after breaking up the country. I do think it has the potential to create greater chaos, and Andrew mentioned it, but you know, in 1995, and Chantal wrote a book about this, a lot of people voted yes because they wanted to send a message to Ottawa, and I think this is a first step to many, many more problems down the line.
There's also this bogus arithmetic where she says this respects the will of the 700,000 people who signed these two petitions. Well, the 400,000 people who voted, who signed the Forever Canadian petition, never wanted to have also have a question on whether to hold a referendum on separation. And the people who voted for the referendum question didn't want to have a question on whether to stay Canadian. And never mind even those people, there's probably 2 million people or more in Alberta who don't want to have a referendum on either subject. Where are they being represented in all this?
Chantal.
Well, stepping back from all this, the good news is if you ask Quebecers today, with the Parti Québécois leading in the polls, a referendum question on do you want a referendum, it would lose squarely. There is no appetite for it, and I suspect that the majority vote in Alberta is going to be, no, we're not interested in having this referendum. But if you're going to go down, I'm kind of have mixed feelings about the notion that Premier Smith's view of federalism is out of sync with reality, in the sense that when I read it, excuse me, I'll be testifying to my age, so it looked to me like Joe Clark's vision of a community of communities, and a debate that we've been having for 50 years about what the federation is. Is it a strong central government, or is it provinces asserting sovereignty of some sort in their areas of jurisdiction? That didn't sound very foreign to me. Reading it from Quebec, it would be the federalist position in Quebec.
Is it about, though, trying to deal with what is real frustration for some Albertans, or is it about trying to preserve her own position as leader of the party and premier of the province? Chantal, and then I'll get everybody else to weigh in quickly.
I think the second, preserving her position as the premier and trying to keep her base happy enough that she doesn't go the way that Jason Kenney went.
Althea?
I don't think it needs to be one or the other. I think it's both, frankly. I think she's trying to save her job. I think she's also, I mean, there are people, I'm in Edmonton, who feel very strongly about leaving and who are very unhappy with the current status quo. I just think it's incredibly risky because a whole bunch of other issues can be lumped in together, and then the question doesn't become what the question is actually about.
Last word to you, Andrew.
It's entirely acceptable to talk about Alberta's grievances, real or imagined, with the rest of the country or with the Federation or with the federal government. What's not reasonable, what's not acceptable, is to back your demands in that those kinds of negotiations or talks or discussions with the threat of separation. Separation itself is, I would say, illegitimate, but even more legitimate in a way is this insincere threat where you don't actually want to separate. You just want to, as I say, get your way by threatening to do bad things. And we cannot sanction that. We've done that far too long as a country, and we're reaping the whirlwind from that. The people who are doing this in Alberta are very much citing the Quebec example established over many decades, and we're paying the price for that now, just as we paid for it in dealing with Quebec.
Okay, we're going to leave this part there. When we come back, we're going to take a look at how BC is responding to the Alberta-Ottawa energy deal. At issue tonight, energy ambitions. The Prime Minister says Canada must do its part as the world deals with a crisis, and his government won't wait on provinces opposed to development.
We don't want to hear what people are against. We want to hear what they're for. If things get stalled here, we're going to be spending more time elsewhere in the country.
But BC's Premier says environmental concerns cannot be ignored.
Part of the truth for British Columbia is that development work that we're doing, of developing our economy, has to go hand in hand with environmental protection.
So how are provinces responding to Ottawa's push for energy infrastructure? Is Ottawa being pushed to referee energy deals between provinces? Here to break all that down now, Chantal, Andrew, and Althea. Althea, I mean, obviously this is all very much connected to what we were just talking about, to the deal that Ottawa struck with Alberta, to trying to tamp down those separatist sentiments. And now the Prime Minister in a position where I guess he has to do something to try and make sure that David Eby is satisfied with the state of the Federation as well. What did you make of the Premier's complaints and the way the Prime Minister responded?
It's quite unusual, actually, to have a Premier so vocal in his criticism of the federal government. But I think he had a point. You know, like when the federal government spends that much time placating a province that makes a lot of noise because of sovereigntist elements, it kind of means that the provinces that are behaving properly or positively with the federal government feel like they're getting short shafted, and you know that's what Premier Eby was saying. Also, Premier Eby is also going to be facing a tough re-election bid, and he needs to have some wins, and it's not clear that the Prime Minister seems sensitive to that, or as sensitive to that as he is to Premier Smith's wishes. And some of the things are hard, you know, no lines for NDP supporters in British Columbia, who happen to also be, in some cases, federal Liberal supporters. And so I think it's interesting. It's also interesting that the Prime Minister's yardsticks keeps moving, so I can understand a frustration from a province like British Columbia where they're not actually sure what the move is. But similarly interesting is the Prime Minister's kind of slap down of that criticism, because of course you can be for something but also frame it in a critical lens, and clearly everybody wants to be singing from the same songbook. At least that's what the federal government wants, and it does not want to be publicly criticized.
Yeah, I mean, those comments, Andrew, that the Prime Minister made about saying, you know, if you're not going to work with us, then we'll find someone else to work with. I'm not sure that those are politically the smartest questions, but I understand why he might say that. What did you make of how that meeting unfolded?
Well, I can sympathize up to a point with Premier Eby that the Prime Minister's approach to Alberta and the Prime Minister's approach, at least present with the BC, are simply studying contrasts, the emollients with which he's been trying to make concessions to the government of Alberta versus my way or the highway with the Premier. And I certainly sympathize with him when he says it cannot be that we're going to reward bad behavior of that kind. I think he used the exact phrase, bad behavior, or the threat of separation. Using the threat of separation to get what you want. The Premier, however, has a bit of a short memory, because it wasn't so long ago that premiers of British Columbia were using unconstitutional assertions of powers, were taking advantage of unlawful blockades to prevent a pipeline from being built through their province. So that's bad behavior of a different kind as well. So what's common to both of them is we've got provinces that are willing to step outside the normal rules of law and engagement and constitutional processes to push and get their way, whether it's to get a pipeline built or to stop a pipeline from being built. And neither of those types of tactics should be allowed to succeed.
Chantal.
And on the other hand, you have a federal government that is basically exempting itself from a bunch of laws and regulations to push through its pet projects or those that it decides to shepherd. I was curious about this notion that if BC stalls were going to be looking or working with other provinces, because one, if you're going to get a pipeline to the Pacific Ocean, there is only one province that can. So,
there is.
Yeah, sure. Feel free to look elsewhere, but there's not going to be a pipeline. But the other issue is, of all of the projects that are being discussed between the federal government and the province of British Columbia, only one seems to be a major issue. There's an LNG development, there are mines. And so is the message here, if you don't do my pipeline bidding, I'm going to myself stall on every other project, which kind of sounds like blackmail. I'm not sure it was politically very effective. It did sound great in that room of business people.
Sure.
But when you think it through, you think, okay, so you're going to go somewhere else? Well, then there won't be a pipeline to the Pacific Ocean, is basically what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, some of that whole conversation and the things that were said in the room, Althea, did make me wonder, you know, with all due respect to the Prime Minister, whether he gets what's unfolding sort of in front of him, you know, for all his strategic acumen on the business side. There's a lot of things, a lot of moving parts here.
Oh, I think the Prime Minister gets what's happening. I think that, you know, there's lots that we're not privy to because it's happening behind closed doors. The Prime Minister has said very clearly that British Columbia is to share parts of the profits. I'm assuming there are negotiations happening around that. Premier Eby has put a red line on the tanker ban, for example. He does not want to see that lifted. Federal government seems open to southern route, but is you know not ruling out a northern route. So I think it's about public positioning on other things happening behind closed doors more than anything else. Yeah. I think there's other questions. You know, port infrastructure, for example. We talked about the whales last week, but I love whales, so I'm going to mention it again. I think he's very savvy on those things. I think where there may be more of a blind spot is like on him insisting that they're going to meet their net zero by 2050. That does not seem like it's going to happen whatsoever. I also think that it's kind of hard to take the Prime Minister at its word when he goes against he put things in the budget, for example, in November of 2025, just 6 months ago, and now is totally revisiting them. So I think that the premiers know this, and they know that they need to get something much firmer in hand, and that the Prime Minister is perhaps more flexible than he says or hints publicly.
Yeah. Okay, we'll leave it there. There's a lot to talk about. There'll be more to talk about. Thank you all for that this week. That is it for At Issue on the National. We're going to keep this conversation going. Talk about how some of the issues around trade and the United States are continuing to flare up in unusual ways. Now back to Adrian in Toronto, though.
Next, Amelia Earhart returns to Harbour Grace, Newfoundland.
Simply, it was a job of re-welding the bronze back together.
We'll show you how a piece of stolen commemorative art was carefully and lovingly restored. That is next in our moment. You are looking at the statue of Amelia Earhart in Harbour Grace, Newfoundland, nearly 100 years after she became the first woman to fly solo nonstop across the Atlantic. So that statue is back home after it was stolen, then later found in pieces last year. Tonight, its restoration and unveiling is our moment.
They were relieved that it was back, in place. This is a piece dedicated to Amelia Earhart. The Harbour Grace Airfield is where Amelia Earhart left off to traverse the North Atlantic and land in Derry, Ireland. There was a couple of individuals that actually damaged the statue by removing it. It had been missing for a while. So the piece was cut up into multiple sections, and then somebody came forward with a report on where the statue could be found. The RCMP recovered it, and they did their investigation. The legs were cut off, and the torso was cut in sections. We collected the piece. I could see a path forward where we could get this back in the community. Simply, it was the job of re-welding the bronze back together. It was a wonderful unveiling on the anniversary of her voyage across the ocean. You kind of get taken aback by the reaction from people when you understand how moved they are by the work and the fact that it's back and it's in its rightful home.
It's interesting. Morgan talks about it being simply a matter of rewelding, but he worked on it for about a year on and off, and he says he found himself realizing he's going to miss seeing her around the foundry. From all of us at the National, thanks for being with us. I'm Adrienne Arsenault. Take care.